It has been more than 20 years since the murders of O.J. Simpson's ex-wife Nicole and her friend Ron Goldman. It thrust Ron's sister Kim into the media spotlight. Well, now a dedicated victims' rights advocate, she profiles victims and survivors of high-profile violent crimes in her new book, Media Circus, a look at the private tragedy in the public eye. Kim, good morning. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
You've been on before. You had your book, told your story. And in this book, it's interesting, you're telling other stories, other survivors, people who've been through violent crimes that were in this media spotlight. Why did you want to tell these stories?
They're stories that haven't been told yet, you know, and no disrespect to the media. They're stories that kind of go behind the scenes of where the media and members of the public may have been a little disrespectful or insensitive. And I wanted to sort of show people what it's like to try to grieve publicly and how hard that life is and also how comforting it can be.
It's an inside look for sure. You talk to a lot of people, everyone from Sharon Tate's sister. We of course remember the Manson murders, the wife of the DC sniper. Is there one story or one anecdote that kind of comes to mind that really stood out to you?
Each story was so unique and each chapter was so, you know, individualized for that family. They all sort of resonate with me because it talked about resilience and how you can gain control in a really uncontrollable situation and the power of healing and growth and the process. I love how each member, you know, found their own voice throughout their process, and I just was inspired by every story.
Are there common strands when you have a horrible situation like this and for whatever reason it is of interest to the media, it becomes a national story of what these families go through, that kind of added trauma potentially to what they're already experiencing?
You know, I think each member that I interviewed, every family had a unique situation to them because, you know, the media was different, the social media element added, why sometimes, you know, certain stories rose to the top and others didn't. There really wasn't, we didn't get to the bottom of it. It was just really teaching and talking about what their unique experience was. And
some tough lessons for the media in this book.
Yeah, I mean, how to be respectful, how to be responsible, how to share a story that is based in truth and not mistruths. And unfortunately, sometimes families don't want to always talk to the media, so that's when stories that aren't fact-checked kind of rise up, and then the families say, wait, I want to tell my story, and they want to get back involved, and so that yin and yang is really hard.
Yeah, it's interesting because I thought it's a kind of a batch of mixed emotions in this with regard to the media, because some families felt traumatized by all the attention, and yet other families were saying, I want to tell my story. Right. I want to tell my story in detail. I want the world to know exactly what happened to my loved one.
Right, but knowing how and when and having some control over that, I think, is probably the most difficult part, because you always just want to talk and you want to share, and it's not always the right time.
What did some of the families, I think about Judy Shepard, who's the mother of Matthew Shepard, who was a victim of a hate crime, a gay hate crime, or Esau Garner, whose husband, Eric Garner, was killed in a case of police brutality. What did they say about being at the center of kind of larger social movements?
You know, I remember specifically with Esau how hard it was for her to walk down the street and have people chanting, I can't breathe. And people thought they were being so supportive, but for her, those were the last words that her husband ever spoke. And every time she heard it, it was traumatizing for her. And once she was able to understand the meaning behind it and the reason people were doing it, it slowly began to comfort her. And same with, you know, Judy Shepard. She emerged as this victims' rights advocate and really wanted to get involved and to leave a legacy for her son Matthew, and you know that took years for her to figure out how to do that and how to again gain some control back.
So many people know you, of course, because you lost your brother Ron. The O.J. Simpson case continues to captivate people. There's even a mini series coming out. Does something like that bring it all up for you? Not that it ever goes away, but do you know what I mean? Does it in some ways make it more difficult?
Well, you know, all the families talk about that. You know, even though, you know, they're living their life privately, it's very public still for people. People still are vested in all these stories, and so it keeps coming up. And in some ways it's great because there's life lessons and there's, you know, lessons to learn from their justice system. For me, it's always right here. I'm learning how to try to use the media and this book and these stories to try to educate and empower and teach, and hopefully that's the good message that people get from it.
Yeah, as one of the families said to you, the human being's pain that you're reading about, they're human beings. It's real pain.
And I think, you know, for the community and the public too, they want to be so supportive, and we're real people on the other side of it. So
thank you, Kim Goldman. Always good to see you again.
You.
The book
Thanks.
is called Media Circus.